motion to build a dedicated cancer care center in Brampton was recently passed, and we all have that to thank to Ontario's NDP deputy leader and Brampton Centre MPP Sara Singh, which I have here with me to discuss this great news for the city of Brampton. MPP Sara Singh, I'd like to welcome you back to Correio da Manhã Canada, and I want to start off by saying congratulations on this victory. I know this will mean a lot to many affected families in Brampton in the future. Can you briefly talk us through the process until so far?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on, Teresa. It's always a pleasure. I think this is great news for the city of Brampton and residents, a victory for them and those that are struggling with a cancer diagnosis. We know that in Brampton, healthcare inequity has been, a problem for many decades. We've never received our fair share of provincial funding when it comes to our healthcare services. We have some of the longest wait times in the province in hallway medicine, and only one ER still for over 700,000 people in the city of Brampton. And this motion seeks to address the healthcare inequity that we see in Brampton by committing to build and fund a dedicated cancer care center in the city of Brampton, something that William Osler has proposed. And so, having this will mean the world of difference for people in our communities who have been forced to go to cities like Mississauga or as far as Toronto in order to access the life-saving cancer care they need. I know that was my family's experience when my brother was diagnosed with cancer in 2017. And I've heard from so many families like Toby, who also helped inspire this. Unfortunately, Toby also has passed, but his family struggled to get the healthcare that Toby needed and the cancer care that Toby needed. And so this motion calls on the government to fully fund the cancer care center in Brampton. And I'm grateful, and as I know the community is, that the government has supported this motion, but we actually need to see the commitment in the budget for this project. We don't want to see more empty promises for the people of Brampton. We need to see a firm commitment, and I want to see shovels in the ground.
According to statistics, an estimated 2 in 5 Canadians will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. And in 2018, this condition was the leading cause of death in Ontario. This is an urgent matter in Brampton. So when will residents be able to see this project brought to life and up and running?
Well, I know that William Osler has a proposal that is, in the hands of the government at the moment. And this project should be up and off the ground, hopefully, by no later than 2026. That's what we've called on the government to do, to commit to funding this project and making sure that the capacity that William Osler needs to get those shovels in the ground is there. So I hope that this isn't something that gets delayed by the provincial government, by the Conservative government. I hope it's something that they can fund in the next upcoming spring budget. That's how we'll know when those shovels will actually be able to get in the ground.
Cancer treatments are also a very serious issue, and they're something that can barely be postponed. And we know how the pandemic has affected patients who suffer this condition. Are we going to see a more prepared care center in Brampton that can tackle a threatening environment such as the pandemic?
Absolutely. That's the hope. That's the hope behind this motion. Teresa, as you highlight, with the pandemic, we saw people have their surgeries delayed, their diagnoses delayed. This is not something we can afford to do here. I know that a report from Sunnybrook Hospital by Dr. Tony Iskander, for example, estimates that Ontarians will lose upwards of 800 life years because of delays in surgeries and diagnoses. So the hope is that we're learning lessons from the pandemic. We're understanding how we can do things better. That's what the opposition is calling on the government to do, is make the necessary investments to help ensure that people are not waiting for the life-saving cancer care they need. We've also called on the government to ensure that there's equity in how, for example, take-home cancer medications are funded. Currently, we know, patients from the CanCertainty Coalition have said that patients are not getting the cancer care that they need if they have to take home those cancer care medications. So as the NDP, we have called on the government to help fund those take-home medications. In William Osler's catchment area, we know that cancer rates are going to increase double, frankly, in the next couple of years. So we need to be proactive. Let's not wait for the situation to get from bad to worse before we take action. We can fix this, and that's exactly what New Democrats are fighting to do.
One of the $1 million questions is, how much is this project going to cost Brampton?
So the Cancer Care Center, the proposal is for $365 million. And I think it's a very important investment in our local community. And part of the motion actually really does put the responsibility on the provincial government to fund this, not our local municipality, which has been far too often the case, which means that the taxpayers of Brampton would now have to come up with the money to fund these projects. What I called on this government to do was commit to funding this so that burden wasn't put on the people of Brampton, but rather the provincial government. As we know, in Brampton, we have never received our fair share of provincial healthcare investments. We actually received some of the lowest per capita funding in the province. And so this motion is really important because I don't think that people in Brampton should have to pay more for healthcare when they haven't been receiving the services. I think the province needs to step up to the plate, use the tools that it has, and make sure that the people of Brampton get the healthcare services that they deserve.
So now that the motion has passed, what are the next steps forward?
Well, the next steps are to, one, make sure that the government will be putting this funding into the upcoming spring budget. We know that the government has delayed the budget, and so we're hopeful that we will see this money allocated in the upcoming spring budget. The pressure is still going to be on. So if we don't see these funding commitments, we're going to reiterate these asks to the government. Year after year since they've been elected, they committed to building, hospital capacity for our community, but we actually never saw the investments in those budgets. So part of my responsibility is to hold the government accountable to the commitment that they've made for the people of Brampton. And I'm calling on the people of Brampton to continue to do that with me as well and make sure that the government is going to invest in the healthcare services that we all deserve. And I just want to take a moment to thank all of our local community advocates and our healthcare workers who are really the champions here in making sure that this work is getting done every single day. And I just thank you for the opportunity to share this news with everyone.